Now let's turn our attention to events in Uganda ahead of the presidential election, which is already taking place today. Joining me to look at this is a political analyst, Amuda Mosigbod from Oyo State, Ibadan. And now, Amuda, there's been so much talk about how this election is hotly contested, especially because of the violence that we saw before today. Just talk to us about what you expect to play out today in that election in Uganda.
I think for anyone who has followed up events in Uganda, one would not be surprised that this election is keenly contested. The result may sway either way because of the fact that the two major contenders, Bobby Wine and the incumbent president, Museveni, already have their what I'll call their catchment areas. Here is a Museveni who is touted as being the restorer of peace and has brought much economic prosperity to Uganda. But then on the other side is a Bobby Wine who has a large youth followership. And of course, if you also look at the demography of Uganda, over 48% of the population are within the age of 15 and 64. So it tells you of how much keenly contested the election will be. Now, how is it going to turn out? Well, as it is always the case with competitive authoritarianism across the world and even in Africa, we know that the election is a lot skewed against opposition. We've seen so many arrests against Bobby Wine particularly. We've also seen how the police have become an instrument. In fact, the deployment of state resources against the opposition. And we've also seen how EU observers, US observers have declined to participate in the election because the electoral umpire is not ready to accede to some of their demands. So we only have EU observers on ground. It tells you a lot that while like Bobby Wine rightly advises supporters that they shouldn't necessarily be on ground to prevent rigging, but we just hope that the election will be free and fair as expected, because the antics before the election speak otherwise. All
right, so Amuda, you raised a point about U.S. observers, in fact, international observers not being there because President Yoweri Museveni said that African Union and East African Committee observers were enough to monitor this election. But another thing is that internet has now been cut off, and many say that, look, how do you transmit results from around the country to the tally center in Kampala, and that in between that process that you could have irregularities? Should that be some sort of concern?
Of course, it will be a very major concern. Like I told you, the demography of Uganda says that about 49% of the population fall between that 15 to 64. Now, this is the population that is most times social media savvy. Now, Bobby Wine has also given the mandate to his supporters to take their cameras to the polling units, make sure they record everything, and also follow up on the tally. Now, how do they upload these images? How do they upload the videos, whatsoever images they're able to capture at the polling units when there's a clampdown on social media? So it raises so much concern. And like I said, it's a competitive authoritarianism. It's like you have 11 players with the referee against another team, where which obviously has its own goalposts, expanded and heightened, and it has only 6 players on the pitch.
All right, so many are worried not just for the process today, many are worried for the continued political stability in Uganda, especially with the kind of violence. Over 200 people were reported to have died just because of this election. Do you share the same worry about political stability in Uganda?
In fact, my take-off point would be the statement by one of the Ugandan ministers, who said that, well, if the police feel that they have enough reason to shoot you, then they will shoot and kill you. And in fact, he repeated that statement again, I think to BBC. So it tells you of how tensed up the whole situation is. So the simple message to every Tom, Dick, and Harry is that, well, the police is at liberty to shoot on sight anyone they, in their own opinion, conceived to be fomenting trouble. And by fomenting trouble, it could mean that you are challenging the status quo, you are challenging the irregularities that is taking place. So it tells you a lot about what people are expecting. And of course, if you also look at the protests that sparked off the arrest of Bobby Wine recently too. We saw over 50 people died. And the number has not reduced. In fact, towards the last period of his campaign, he had to be going around with he had to go around with a vest, the bulletproof vest, and that speaks a lot with the helmet.
So President Museveni has clearly stated that, look, the presence of international observers, the opinion of international community is not necessary and not needed at this time. So what can the African Union do to ensure that there is peace and a peaceful transfer of, irrespective of who wins in that election?
Well, the first thing they should, what the AU should do here is to ensure that the playground is fair enough to everybody. Because justice must not only be served, it seems to be served. And like they say, peace is not the absence of war, but the process. So when justice is not seen to be served there's going to be a major problem here. And that's what I think AU a major role to play here. So for everyone who is concerned about what is happening in Uganda, it's a question well are they going to ensure that each of the parties is fairly or plays according to the rules.
Political analyst Amuda Mosigbod, thanks for talking to TVC News.
You're most welcome.